At 76, she had $96 left, until her dog stopped at one floorboard no one else questioned. The wind cut through the trees as Evelyn pulled up to a cabin no one wanted, its walls leaning, its windows boarded shut. She hadn't come for answers, just a place to last a few nights. But Rex wouldn't go inside like the rest of it didn't matter. He stopped, listened, and then he chose a single spot on the floor, like he knew something she didn't. What would you do, take the money and walk away, or stay and find out what your gut is telling you? The grocery store had been closed long enough for the handwritten sign on the glass to curl at the edges. Under new management, opening soon. Soon had come and gone weeks ago. Evelyn Carter sat in her pickup across the empty lot, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel like she had forgotten what they were supposed to do next. The truck ticked softly as it cooled. Somewhere down the road, a screen door slammed, the sound carrying thin in the cold air. She reached into her purse again, though she already knew what was there. 320s, 110, a 5, a 1, and a handful of coins that made more noise than they were worth. $96. She counted it twice, then a third time, slower, pressing each bill flat against her knee as if it might stretch if she handled it carefully enough. It didn't. Beside her, Rex shifted his weight. The old seat springs creaked under him. He didn't whine, didn't paw. He just watched her hands, his dark eyes steady, ears tilted forward like he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. "You've seen better days," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she meant him or herself. Rex's tail gave one slow thump against the seat. Outside, the town felt thinner than it used to. Half the storefronts along the street were dark now. The hardware store had closed in the spring. The diner still opened, but only for breakfast. Even the gas station had cut its hours back to daylight. People didn't linger anymore. They passed through. Evelyn folded the bills and slipped them back into her purse, careful, deliberate. She zipped it shut and held it there for a second, fingers resting on the worn leather like it might offer some answer if she waited long enough. It didn't. Across the lot, the grocery store windows reflected the pale sky, the kind of sky that didn't promise snow yet, but made you think about it, made you count blankets, made you check the seals around the doors, made you wonder how long $96 could last. She leaned back in the seat and let her eyes close for just a moment, not sleeping, just pausing. But the memory came anyway. The landlord's voice, flat, not unkind, just finished. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. The new tenant's paying 3 months up front." She had nodded like that made sense, because it did. It always did. Money decided things long before people got a say. You can stay through the weekend. Through the weekend. She had thanked him. Even now, she wasn't sure why. A gust of wind rattled something loose on the side of the building behind her. Rex's head turned instantly toward the sound. His body stiffened, just slightly, then eased again when nothing followed. Always watching. Always listening. Evelyn opened her eyes and stared out through the windshield. The parking lot stretched wide and empty, cracked asphalt with weeds pushing through the seams. A shopping cart sat tipped over near the far curb, one wheel spinning slowly in the breeze. It looked like something left behind in a hurry, or something no one bothered to come back for. She reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the envelope. It was plain, creased from being opened too many times already, even though she'd only had it for 3 days. Her name was written across the front in careful print. Inside, the paperwork was simple. Too simple. Her cousin Elias Carter, deceased. Property transferred. A cabin. No details worth mentioning. No value assigned. Just a location she had to look up on a map because she hadn't been there in 30 years, maybe more. She turned the paper over again, reading the same lines she had memorized without meaning to. A cabin. Condemned, according to the county note stapled behind it. She let out a slow breath. "That's what we've got," she said quietly. Rex looked at her, ears lifting again. "That's it." He didn't move closer. Didn't try to climb into her lap the way he used to when he was younger. He just held her gaze steady and patient. Waiting. Evelyn glanced down at the envelope again. Elias had never been a talker. Not when they were young. Not later either. The kind of man who fixed things without explaining how. Who showed up, did what needed doing, and left before anyone thought to ask questions. They hadn't argued. They hadn't grown close either. Just drifted. And now this. A cabin she had never seen. A place no one had mentioned in years. And somehow, it had ended up with her. She looked back out at the empty lot. If she stayed here, she'd run out of money in a matter of days. Gas alone would eat most of it. Food would take the rest. If she left, well, at least there was something waiting, even if it was falling apart, even if it had already been written off. She adjusted her grip on the wheel. The metal was cold. Rex shifted again, this time leaning slightly toward her, his shoulder pressing into her arm. Not pushing, just there. She rested her hand on his neck. His fur was thick, warmer than anything else in that truck. He didn't move away. "You always did like a bad idea," she said softly. His tail gave another slow thump. For a moment, she sat there, listening to the wind, watching the empty road, letting the weight of the decision settle into place. Then she turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then caught with a rough, uneven rumble. The heater would take its time, like it always did, or it wouldn't work at all. She didn't wait to find out. Evelyn pulled the truck into gear and eased out of the parking lot, tires crunching over gravel at the edge of the pavement. She didn't look back at the store. Didn't look back at the room she'd already lost. There wasn't anything there for her now, just the road ahead. And somewhere at the end of it, a condemned cabin. And whatever it meant that Elias had left it to her, Rex sat upright as they turned onto the narrow highway, his eyes fixed forward, ears alert to something she couldn't hear yet. Evelyn tightened her grip on the wheel. $96. And one last place to go. That was enough. It had to be. The truck rattled as Evelyn eased it down the narrow highway, tires humming against worn asphalt. The sky had settled into that dull gray that never quite turned into anything. No snow, no sun, just a low ceiling pressing everything down. Rex sat upright beside her, steady as ever, his gaze fixed ahead. Every so often, his ears twitched, catching something beyond the engine noise, something distant, something she couldn't hear. Evelyn drove in silence. The town fell away behind her quicker than she expected. A few scattered houses, a rusted mailbox leaning at the edge of a ditch, then nothing but trees and the long stretch of road curling into the hills. She hadn't planned where to stop, hadn't thought that far ahead. Just forward, just moving. After a while, she spotted a small gas station up ahead, one of those places that hadn't been updated in decades. 2 pumps, a faded awning, a bell tied to the door that rang when it opened. She pulled in slow, letting the truck idle before shutting it off. For a moment, she just sat there. Then she reached for her purse. $96. She stared at it again, then folded it closed and stepped out into the cold. The air hit sharper out here. No buildings to block the wind. It moved straight through her coat, thin as it was. Rex jumped down beside her, landing quietly, his nose already working the air. He didn't wander far. Stayed close. Always close. Inside, the station smelled like stale coffee and motor oil. A radio played low behind the counter, some country song drifting in and out through static. A man stood behind the register, late 60s maybe. Gray beard, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. He looked up when the bell rang. Gave a small nod. Afternoon. Evelyn nodded back. Afternoon. She moved slowly through the aisle, picking up a loaf of bread, a small jar of peanut butter. Nothing else. She didn't need to do the math again. At the counter, the man rang it up without much talk. "Headed out?" he asked, glancing toward the window where her truck sat. Something like that. He nodded again, like he understood more than she'd said. She paid in cash, watched the number drop lower in her mind. When she stepped back outside, Rex was already waiting by the truck. Not pacing, not restless, just watching the road. That was when she noticed the car. It hadn't been there when she pulled in. A dark sedan sat parked near the edge of the lot. Clean. Too clean for a place like this. No dust on the sides. Tires still holding that showroom shine. The driver's door opened before she reached her truck. The man who stepped out didn't belong here. That was the first thing she noticed. Pressed jacket, polished shoes that had never seen mud, hair trimmed neat, the kind of man who carried himself like every place he walked into already belonged to him. He smiled as he approached. Not wide, not friendly exactly, just practiced. "Mrs. Carter," he said, like he was certain of it. Evelyn stopped. Rex didn't bark, but he moved. Just one step forward, enough to put himself between Evelyn and the man without making it obvious. Evelyn's hand rested lightly on Rex's shoulder. "Yes?" The man extended a hand. "Harold Vance. I believe we have a mutual interest in a property up the road." She didn't take his hand. It hung there a second longer before he let it drop, smile never shifting. "I heard about your recent inheritance," he continued smoothly. "The cabin." Evelyn felt something tighten in her chest. "Word travels fast," she said. "In small places like this, it usually does." Rex's ears were forward now, his eyes fixed on the man's face, unblinking. Not aggressive, just aware. Harold Vance glanced down at the dog briefly, then back at Evelyn. "Beautiful animal," he said. "Well trained, I imagine." "He knows what matters," Evelyn replied. Something in that answer lingered for a second longer than it should have. Then Vance nodded, shifting his weight slightly. "I won't take much of your time," he said. "I'll be direct. That property, your cabin, it's not in good condition, structurally compromised. The county's already flagged it." Evelyn said nothing. "I represent a group interested in acquiring land in that area. Quiet development. Nothing disruptive. We'd be willing to take that burden off your hands." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Held it out. $5,000. Cash. Today. No inspections, no delays. The number landed heavier than it should have. 5,000. It would stretch. Not forever, but longer than $96. A lot longer. Evelyn looked at the envelope, then at the man, then down at Rex. Rex hadn't moved, but there was something in the way he stood now. Not stiff, not tense, just anchored, like he'd decided something. Evelyn let out a slow breath. "I haven't even seen it yet," she said. "That's exactly why I'm here now," Vance replied, "just a little too quickly. No need for you to make the trip. It's not worth the trouble." Not worth the trouble. The words settled between them. Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly. "You drove out here to tell me not to bother seeing something I own?" Vance's smile didn't break. "I'm offering you convenience," he said, "and a fair price for something that, frankly, has more problems than potential." Rex shifted again, just a slight movement of his head. But his gaze never left the man. Evelyn noticed. And suddenly, she felt something else beneath the uncertainty. Not confidence, not yet, but resistance. A quiet kind. "I'll take a look first," she said. Vance's smile held, but his eyes changed. Just a little. "I understand," he said. "Of course. But offers like this, they don't always stay on the table." Evelyn nodded once. "I'll keep that in mind." There was a pause, long enough to feel. Then Vance slipped the envelope back into his coat. "If you change your mind," he said, reaching into his pocket again, "my card." He handed it to her. She took it this time. His fingers were warm, too warm for the cold air around them. "Drive safe, Mrs. Carter." He turned and walked back to his car without another word. The engine started smooth. Quiet. A moment later, he was gone. Dust settling slowly behind him. Evelyn stood there a few seconds longer. Then she looked down at Rex. "Well," she said quietly, "that was something." Rex finally moved. He stepped closer, brushing against her leg, then turned his head back toward the road where the car had disappeared. Watching. Still watching. Evelyn opened the truck door and climbed in. She set the bag of food on the seat, placed the card on the dashboard, and sat there for a moment, staring at it. Harold Vance. No logo, just a name and a number. Clean. Simple. Too simple. She picked it up, turned it over. Blank on the back. Rex jumped back into the seat beside her. This time he didn't sit upright. He settled in, but his head remained lifted, ears angled forward. Alert. Evelyn tucked the card into her coat pocket. Then she turned the key. The engine groaned, then caught. She pulled back onto the road without looking toward the gas station again. $5,000. For something she hadn't even seen, she tightened her grip on the wheel. "Guess we're going to take a look after all," she said. Rex didn't respond, but his tail gave one slow, steady thump, and the road ahead narrowed as it climbed. Deeper into the trees, toward something that clearly mattered more than she had been told, and maybe more than she was ready for. The road narrowed not long after the last mailbox disappeared. At first, it was still pavement, cracked and patched in places, but holding. Then the blacktop gave way without warning to gravel, the tires crunching loud beneath the truck. A few hundred yards later, even that began to thin out, swallowed by dirt and old ruts carved deep from years of weather and neglect. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, both hands firm on the wheel. "Easy now," she muttered, more to the truck than anything else. Branches reached in from both sides, brushing along the doors with a dry, scratching sound, the kind that made you wince even if you knew the paint had given up a long time ago. Rex shifted beside her, bracing himself with each dip and rise. He didn't look at her now. His attention had moved outward, scanning through the windshield, then to the side windows, then back again. Watching everything. The trees grew thicker as the road climbed. Tall pines mixed with older hardwoods, their bare limbs stretching overhead like fingers. The light dimmed under them, turning the afternoon into something closer to dusk. Evelyn glanced at the dashboard clock. Still early. Didn't feel like it. She slowed the truck as the road curved sharply to the left, hugging the side of a slope. The drop on the right side wasn't steep, but it was enough. Enough to make her keep her eyes straight ahead. "Not much traffic up here," she said under her breath. There were no tire tracks. Not fresh ones, anyway. Just faint impressions hardened into the ground. Maybe from months ago, maybe longer. She drove another mile, then another. The engine strained on the incline. The heater sputtered once, then pushed out a weak breath of lukewarm air before fading again. Evelyn didn't bother adjusting it. She cracked the window instead. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, carrying the smell of damp earth and old leaves. There was something else under it, too. Stone, maybe. The dry, mineral scent of the mountain itself. Rex lifted his head higher, nose working faster now. Something had his attention. "Smell something?" Evelyn asked. His ears twitched, but he didn't look at her. The road shifted again, narrowing into what barely qualified as a path. Deep grooves cut through the dirt, forcing the truck to follow them, whether she liked it or not. She slowed to a crawl. A branch snapped under the tire with a sharp crack that echoed too loudly in the quiet. That was when she noticed it. The silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that felt held. No birds, no insects, just the engine, the wind, and the occasional scrape of wood against metal. Evelyn swallowed, her grip tightening slightly. "Strange place," she murmured. Rex stood now, front paws planted on the edge of the seat, his body leaning forward. His tail was still, his ears locked straight ahead. Focused. On something she couldn't see yet. The trees thinned just enough to let a pale strip of light through. Then the road leveled, and the cabin came into view. Evelyn slowed without meaning to. The truck rolled forward a few more feet before she eased it to a stop. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't speak. The cabin sat alone in a small clearing, tilted slightly to one side like it had grown tired of holding itself up. The boards were weathered gray, some warped, some missing altogether. Windows were covered with mismatched planks, nailed in place years ago. One corner of the roof sagged inward. A strip of tin hung loose, lifting and falling with the wind, tapping against the wood in a slow, uneven rhythm. There it was. Everything Harold Vance had said. And then some. Evelyn let out a quiet breath. "Condemned," she said. It fit. Rex jumped down before she could stop him. He landed lightly and stood still for a second, taking it in. Then he moved. Not toward the door, not toward the broken steps or the sagging porch. He circled wide instead, nose low, moving along the edge of the clearing. Slow, deliberate. Evelyn opened her door and stepped out. The cold hit harder here, colder than down in town. The wind had more room to move, cutting across the clearing without anything to slow it down. She pulled her coat tighter around her and looked at the cabin again. Up close, it was worse. The wood was split in places, Nails rusted through, boards pulling away from each other just enough to show the darkness inside. The front steps leaned outward, one side sunk deeper into the ground. And there, nailed crooked beside the door, a county notice. Faded almost white. She stepped closer, brushing her fingers across it to clear the dust. Unsafe structure. Do not enter. The ink had bled from rain and time, but the message held. Evelyn stood there, reading it twice, then once more. Behind her, Rex let out a low huff. Not a bark. Just acknowledgement. She turned. He had stopped near the far side of the cabin, head lowered, tail still. He wasn't digging, wasn't pawing, just standing there, looking. Evelyn walked toward him slowly. What is it? He didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the ground in front of him, then flicked briefly to the cabin wall, then back again, like he was putting something together. Evelyn followed his gaze. There was nothing there. Just dirt, a few scattered leaves, the base of the wall where the boards met the ground. Nothing unusual, nothing worth $5,000. She let out a small breath and shook her head. Guess we start with the door, she said. Rex didn't follow right away. He stayed where he was for a moment longer, staring at that same patch of ground. Then, slowly, he turned and came back to her side. Evelyn climbed the steps carefully, testing each one before putting her full weight down. The wood creaked under her, but held. Barely. She reached the door and paused. The handle was rusted. The wood around it cracked and worn. She hesitated, her hand hovering just above it. Behind her, the wind shifted, sending a loose piece of tin clattering against the roof again. Rex stood close now. Closer than before. His shoulder pressed lightly against her leg. Evelyn took a breath. Then she pushed the door. It resisted at first, then gave with a long, slow groan. The darkness inside didn't rush out. It just waited. Evelyn stood there on the threshold, staring into it. Not stepping in yet, not turning back either. Behind her, the road stretched out of sight. Ahead of her, whatever Elias had left behind. She tightened her jaw slightly. Well, she said under her breath, let's see what you thought was worth keeping. Rex didn't move ahead this time. He stayed at her side, watching, waiting, ready. And for the first time since she'd left town, Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Not certainty, not yet, but something close to it. Enough to take one step forward. Into the cabin, into the unknown, and into something that was already beginning to feel different from what she had been told. Different, and not by accident. The air inside the cabin was colder than outside. Not just temperature. Stillness. It carried a dry smell, old wood, metal, something faintly sharp like rust and oil that had settled into the walls over years. Not rot. Not decay the way she expected. Something else. Evelyn stood just inside the doorway, letting her eyes adjust. The light came in thin through the cracks between the boards, strips of gray that cut across the floor in uneven lines. She had expected debris, broken furniture, collapsed beams, the kind of place that had already given up. But that wasn't what she saw. The floor was clear. Not clean exactly, but open. Swept, maybe, at some point. Her boots made a soft, hollow sound as she stepped forward. The boards creaked under her weight, but not weakly, not like they were ready to give out. Rex moved past her, slower now. careful. His nose stayed low, tracing the edges of the room. He didn't run ahead, didn't explore the way a dog usually would in a new place. He checked it, piece by piece. Evelyn took another step in, then another. The main room stretched wider than it looked from outside. A long workbench stood along one wall, solid, worn smooth in places, like it had been used often. Tools rested on top, organized, not scattered. A hammer, a set of wrenches, a rusted metal clamp. All placed where someone had left them, not thrown, not forgotten. Left. She walked toward it, her fingers brushing lightly across the surface. Dust lifted in a thin cloud, but beneath it, the wood was firm, solid. Someone was working here, she said quietly. Rex paused near the center of the room, his head tilted slightly, listening. Evelyn turned, taking in the rest of the space. There was a stove in the corner, old cast iron, the door slightly ajar. A stack of split wood sat beside it, dry and neatly piled, like it had been cut and stored with care. Not recent, but not careless either. She moved closer, crouched slightly, and touched one of the logs. It didn't crumble, didn't flake apart like something left too long. It held. She straightened slowly. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured. The words stayed in the air a second longer than they should have. Because everything she'd been told said this place was worthless. Unstable. A liability. But this was something else. Not maintained, but preserved. Rex let out a soft sound, not a bark. A low, uncertain whine. Evelyn turned toward him. He had moved to the far side of the room now, near the center of the floor. His nose hovered just above the boards. He sniffed once, then again, then took a step back, then forward again, like he couldn't decide what he was sensing. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer, of course, but his behavior changed. He circled once, slow, then again tighter. His claws clicked lightly against the wood as he shifted his weight, head lowering further. He sniffed the same spot again, then scratched. Just once. A short, quick motion, then he stopped. Looked at her. Evelyn frowned slightly. "What are you doing?" Rex didn't scratch again. He stood still, watching her now, waiting. She stepped closer, her boots echoing softly in the quiet. The floor looked like the rest of it. Old boards, worn, slightly uneven, nothing obvious. She pressed her foot down. It held. No give, no hollow sound different from the rest. "Probably nothing," she said, more to herself than to him. Rex's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Evelyn exhaled and straightened up, turning away. "There's bigger problems than that," she added. Her eyes drifted back to the walls, gaps between boards. A section near the ceiling where light pushed through more strongly. The roof needed work. Badly. The stove might still function, but without proper ventilation, it wouldn't matter. The windows, she glanced toward one of the boarded openings. No glass left behind it. Just darkness. Wind slipped through the cracks, whispering softly against the walls. Cold already settling in. And winter wasn't even fully here yet. Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself for a moment, thinking. She had nowhere else and that part hadn't changed. But this place, it wasn't what she expected, not ruined, not empty. Something about it felt paused, like someone had stepped out and meant to come back. Rex moved again, back to that same spot. He lowered himself this time, lying down directly over it, his body angled protectively, eyes still alert. Evelyn noticed. "You like that spot, huh?" she said. He didn't wag his tail, didn't relax, just stayed there. Still. Focused. Evelyn watched him for a moment longer. Then she turned back toward the door, stepping outside again into the cold air. The light felt brighter now after the dim interior. She stood on the porch, looking out over the clearing. The silence returned immediately. That same heavy quiet. No birds, no distant movement, just the wind moving through the trees. She stepped down carefully, walking a few feet away from the cabin to get a better look at it. From here, it looked worse again. Leaning, weathered, barely holding on. But now she knew something she hadn't before. The inside didn't match the outside. Not completely. Her eyes drifted to the ground around the foundation. Dirt packed hard. No fresh disturbance. Nothing obvious. Still, she glanced back toward the open doorway, toward Rex. He hadn't moved. Still in the same place. Still watching. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "All right," she said under her breath. "Maybe we stay a night." The words surprised her as she said them. But they felt right. Not safe. Not comfortable. But right. She turned back toward the truck, grabbing the small bag of food and a blanket from the back seat. When she returned, Rex finally shifted. Just enough to look at her. Not leaving that spot. Not even an inch. Evelyn stepped back inside, closing the door behind her as much as it would allow. The cabin creaked softly in response. Settling. Or waking. She couldn't tell which. She set the bag on the workbench, unwrapped the bread, and broke off a piece. Rex didn't come for it. Didn't even look at it. His attention stayed fixed on the floor beneath him. Evelyn followed his gaze again. That same place, that same stillness. And for the first time since she'd stepped inside, a small thread of unease pulled tighter in her chest. Not fear, not yet. But something close. She walked over slowly and crouched beside him, placing her hand flat against the wood. Cold. Solid. Unmoving. She pressed down slightly. Nothing. She lifted her hand again. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "Whatever you think is there, it'll still be there tomorrow." Rex didn't react. But his eyes shifted to hers for a brief second, then back to the floor. Evelyn stood up slowly, the weight of the day settling into her bones. The light outside was already fading, faster than she expected. She moved to the stove, glancing at the wood stacked beside it. Maybe it would hold. Maybe it wouldn't. But one thing was certain now. This cabin wasn't just a place to sleep. And it wasn't something a man like Harold Vance would chase without reason. Evelyn looked down at Rex again, still guarding that same piece of floor, still waiting. "Yeah," she whispered, "there's something here." The wind brushed against the walls again, softer this time, like it was listening. And whatever answer waited beneath those boards, it wasn't going anywhere. The night came fast in the mountains. By the time Evelyn managed to coax a weak fire to life in the old stove, the light outside had already drained into a dull, heavy gray. The flames were uneven at first, catching only in small bursts before settling into a low, steady burn. It wasn't much, but it was something. She sat on an overturned crate near the stove, her hands stretched toward the heat, watching the way the light moved along the walls. It flickered across the tools, the workbench, the narrow spaces between the boards. Every shadow felt longer in here. Rex hadn't moved far. He had shifted once, just enough to stretch his legs, but he returned to the same place afterward. Curled now, but not asleep. His head rested on his paws, eyes open, watching the floor beneath him as if it might change when no one was looking. Evelyn noticed. She didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, she broke another piece of bread, spread a thin layer of peanut butter, and set it down beside him. He ate it this time, slowly, then went right back to watching. The wind rose sometime after dark, pushing against the cabin in uneven gusts. The loose tin on the roof rattled again, louder now, tapping like something trying to get in. Evelyn lay back on the blanket she'd spread near the stove, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders. Sleep came in pieces. Short. Uneven. Every sound felt closer than it should have. The stove ticking, the wind shifting, the faint creak of wood adjusting to the cold. And once, just once, she thought she heard a dull thump from somewhere beneath the floor. She opened her eyes. Rex was already awake, head lifted, ears forward, still, listening. They stayed like that for a long moment. Then the sound didn't come again. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under. Morning arrived slowly. Cold light slipped through the cracks in the walls, thin and pale, touching the edges of the room one board at a time. The fire had died down to embers. The air felt sharper now. Evelyn pushed herself up with a quiet groan, her joints stiff from the hard floor. She rubbed her hands together, then reached for the last piece of bread. Rex stood before she could call him. Already alert. Already focused. He went straight back to that spot. Nose low. Tail still. Evelyn watched him for a moment, then stood and stretched. "All right," she said softly. "We'll take a look." But before she could move toward him, something else caught her attention. The sound of an engine. Faint at first, then clearer. Tires against dirt. Coming up the road. Evelyn froze. Rex's head snapped toward the door. His posture changed instantly. Not aggressive, but ready. The engine grew louder, steady and controlled, not like someone unfamiliar with the road. Whoever it was, they knew exactly where they were going. Evelyn stepped toward the door, her heart picking up slightly. She didn't need to guess. By the time the dark sedan came into view through the trees, she already knew who it was. Harold Vance. The car rolled into the clearing with the same quiet confidence as before, stopping just short of the cabin. The engine idled smoothly, barely a sound. Evelyn stepped outside. The cold hit her again, sharper this time. Rex followed, close at her side. The driver's door opened. Vance stepped out, adjusting his coat like the temperature didn't bother him at all. He smiled when he saw her. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "I had a feeling you'd come up." Evelyn didn't return the smile. "You've got a habit of showing up where you're not invited." Vance chuckled lightly. "In my line of work, timing is everything." He glanced briefly at the cabin behind her, then at Rex. Just for a second, then back to her. "I trust you had a chance to see the property." "I did." "And?" Evelyn crossed her arms slightly. "It's not what I expected." Vance nodded. "No, it rarely is." There was a pause. Then he reached into his coat again. Another envelope, thicker this time. "I've taken the liberty of adjusting my offer," he said, "given the circumstances." Evelyn didn't move. "How much?" 18,000. Cash. Immediate transfer. No delays. The number landed heavier than the first. 18,000. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was breathing room. A place to stay. A way out. For a brief second, she imagined it. A small apartment. Heat that worked. Food without counting every dollar. No cold nights on a wooden floor. No strange cabin in the middle of nowhere. Just normal. Her fingers tightened slightly against her sleeves. "And what changed?" she asked. Vance's smile held. "Nothing significant. My clients simply recognize potential when they see it." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "You haven't even stepped inside." "I don't need to." That answer came too fast. Too certain. Rex shifted beside her. Not stepping forward. Just grounding himself. Evelyn glanced down at him briefly, then back at Vance. "You're offering 18,000 for something you haven't looked at," she said. "Something you told me yesterday wasn't worth the trouble." Vance's expression didn't change. Circumstances evolve. Silence settled between them. The wind moved lightly through the clearing. Evelyn looked at the envelope, then at the cabin behind her, then back at him. "If I say no," Vance shrugged lightly, "then I respect your decision, of course." Another pause. "But I would advise you to consider the realities of holding a property like this. Liability, maintenance, legal complications. These things have a way of catching up." There it was. Not a threat, not directly, but close enough. Evelyn felt it. That quiet pressure, the kind that didn't need to be loud. She took a slow breath. "I'm not selling," she said. Vance's smile remained. But his eyes sharpened. "Not even for 18,000? Not today." The words surprised her as she said them, but they felt steady. Rex's tail gave a single low movement. Vance studied her for a moment longer. Then he slipped the envelope back into his coat. "Very well," he said, "but I wouldn't wait too long." He turned toward his car, then paused. "One more thing," he added, glancing back over his shoulder. "Places like this, they don't always stay quiet once people start paying attention." Evelyn didn't respond. She watched him get into the car, close the door, and drive away the same way he came. Controlled, certain, gone. The silence returned quickly after. Evelyn stood there for a moment, the cold settling back around her. Then she turned slowly toward the cabin. Rex was already moving. Back inside. Back to that same spot on the floor. He lay down again, exactly where he had been before, his body angled over it like it mattered more than anything else in the room. Evelyn followed him in, closed the door behind her. The air inside felt different now. Not warmer, not safer, but clearer. She walked over and stood above him, looking down at the boards beneath his paws. $18,000. For this. For something no one had even touched. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not wrong," she said quietly to Rex. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stayed there. Waiting. Evelyn looked around the cabin once more. At the tools, the stove, the walls that held together better than they should have. Then back at the floor. Something here mattered, more than it looked, more than she understood, and now more than anyone else wanted her to know. She exhaled slowly. "All right," she said. "This time, we don't wait." The wind brushed lightly against the cabin again. Soft. Almost like it was listening. And whatever had been hidden beneath that floor was starting to feel a lot closer than before. The cabin held the silence differently now. It wasn't just empty space anymore. It felt occupied. Not by anything she could see, but by something waiting to be understood. Evelyn stood over Rex for a long moment, watching him. His body stayed still, but his attention didn't waver. That same place, that same quiet insistence. She exhaled slowly and stepped back. "All right," she murmured. "Let's do this the right way." She moved to the workbench and began searching through the tools. Most were old but not useless. She picked up a hammer, tested its weight, then a flat pry bar, rusted at the edge but solid. Good enough. She turned back toward Rex. He hadn't moved. The floorboards beneath him looked no different from the rest. Same worn grain, same age, same color. But now, she saw it. Not clearly, but just enough. A faint line. Too straight to be natural. Barely visible unless the light hit it just right. Evelyn crouched slowly, setting the pry bar down beside her. She pressed her palm flat against the wood. Still. She leaned her weight slightly. Nothing. She shifted her hand, pressing closer to the faint line. This time, there. A subtle give. Not much, but enough. Her breath caught for a second. Rex's ears lifted. He let out a low sound, not quite a whine, not quite a growl, something in between, something that said he felt it too. Evelyn pulled her hand back, sat there for a moment, thinking. Then she shook her head slightly. "Not yet," she said. The words came out firmer than she expected. Rex looked at her, confused. But he didn't argue. Evelyn stood, brushing the dust from her hands. The light outside had shifted again, fading faster than before. The day was almost gone. And suddenly, she realized how tired she was. Not just from the drive, from everything. The last few days, the choices, the pressure, the weight of it all. She looked back at the floor one more time. "That's not going anywhere," she said quietly. Then she moved to the stove again, adding another piece of wood. The fire caught faster this time, the flames rising with more confidence, pushing back the cold just enough to make the space livable. Barely. She spread her blanket again near the warmth, lowering herself down slowly, her joints protesting. Rex didn't come. He stayed where he was. Guarding. Watching. Evelyn lay back, staring up at the ceiling. The boards above her shifted slightly with the wind, making soft, uneven sounds. The cabin wasn't falling apart, but it wasn't settled either. It was holding. She closed her eyes. Tried to rest, but sleep didn't come. Not easily. The wind picked up again, pushing harder against the walls now. The loose tin on the roof rattled louder, faster, like something impatient. Rex stood suddenly. Evelyn opened her eyes. He moved in a tight circle over the same spot, claws tapping sharply against the wood. His breathing had changed. Faster now. More urgent. Rex, she said quietly. He didn't respond. He scratched again. Harder this time. Once. Twice. The sound echoed through the cabin, louder than it should have. Evelyn pushed herself up. What is it? Rex stepped back, then forward again, pawing at the same place with more force. The wood gave a faint sound beneath it. Different. Hollow. Evelyn felt it before she fully heard it. That shift. That change. Her heart picked up. She grabbed the pry bar and moved beside him. All right, she whispered. This time. Rex stepped aside just enough, not leaving, just giving her space. Evelyn knelt, positioning the edge of the bar along the faint seam she had noticed earlier. Her hands tightened around it. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she pushed. The wood resisted. Then a small crack. Sharp. Sudden. She froze. Listened. Nothing. The wind outside continued. The cabin creaked. Rex leaned forward again, eyes fixed on the point where the wood had shifted. Evelyn adjusted her grip. Pushed harder this time. The board lifted slightly, just enough to see the gap. Dark. Empty. Not dirt. Not foundation. Space. Her breath caught. Hold on, she whispered, more to herself than to him. She worked the bar deeper, pulling slowly, carefully. The wood gave a little more, then stopped. Evelyn leaned back, her arms shaking slightly from the effort. It was there. No question now. Something beneath the floor. Not just structure, not just empty space, something built, something placed. Rex let out a low sound again, pacing once before returning to her side. He didn't lie down this time. He stood. Waiting. Evelyn sat back on her heels, staring at the small gap she had created. The darkness below didn't reveal anything. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt intentional. She swallowed, her thoughts racing. $18,000. For this. For something hidden under a condemned cabin. She shook her head slightly. Tomorrow, she said again. But this time the word carried something different. Not hesitation. Preparation. She carefully lowered the board back into place, pressing it down just enough to cover the opening. Not sealing it. Just closing it for now. Rex didn't like that. He shifted, stepping closer again, nose pressing lightly against the seam. It's not going anywhere, she repeated. He looked up at her, then back at the floor. Then, slowly, he lay down again. But this time, he didn't relax. His body stayed tense. Ready. Evelyn returned to her blanket, sitting instead of lying down. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, staring at the floor from across the room. The cabin felt different now. Smaller. Closer. Like the walls had leaned in just slightly. She listened. To the wind. To the fire. To Rex's steady breathing. And beneath all of it, she thought she could hear something else. Not a sound. Not exactly. More like the absence of one. A quiet that didn't belong. Waiting under the boards. Evelyn leaned back slowly, her eyes never leaving that spot. Sleep didn't come after that. Not really. She drifted in and out, always waking to the same image. Rex, the floor, the gap beneath, and the growing certainty that whatever had been left here had never been meant to stay buried forever. The first light of morning crept in slowly, pale and thin. Evelyn was already awake. Rex stood before she even moved, both of them looking at the same place. The same question. Now closer than ever. And this time, there would be no waiting. The morning air inside the cabin was colder than the night before. Evelyn could see her breath now. Thin clouds drifting in front of her face as she knelt again beside the same section of floor. The light had changed just enough to show the seam more clearly. What had looked like a faint line before now stood out like something deliberately hidden. Rex stood beside her. Still. Focused. Ready. Evelyn reached for the pry bar without hesitation this time. No more guessing, she said quietly. She pressed the edge into the seam again. Pushed. The wood groaned under the pressure, then gave. A sharp crack echoed through the room as the board lifted higher than before. Dust fell in a soft drift from the edges. The smell that came up wasn't rot. It was dry old. Evelyn leaned back slightly, adjusting her grip. All right. Come on, she murmured. She worked the bar deeper, pulling slowly, steadily, until the first plank came loose enough to shift aside. It scraped against the others with a long, dragging sound before settling to the side. The opening widened. Darkness sat beneath it, but not empty darkness, structured. She could see it now. A narrow space, deliberate, built. Rex stepped closer immediately, lowering his head toward the gap. His nose hovered just above the opening, drawing in the scent. Then he looked at her. Evelyn swallowed. Hold on, she said. She reached down, brushing away the loose dirt and debris from the edge, then leaned forward carefully, peering into the space below. At first, nothing. Just shadows. Then her eyes adjusted, and shapes began to form. Boxes. Not wooden. Metal. Rectangular, tightly sealed, stacked with intention. Evelyn's breath caught. Well, I'll be... She sat back on her heels for a moment, letting it settle. This wasn't random. This wasn't storage someone forgot about. This was hidden. Protected. Rex let out a low sound again, his tail giving a slow, uncertain movement. Evelyn wiped her hands on her coat, then reached back down, widening the opening just enough to get her arm through. Easy now, she whispered. She stretched her arm into the space, her fingers brushing against cold metal. It was smooth, solid, not rusted through like she expected. Carefully, she hooked her fingers around the edge of one container and pulled. It didn't move at first. Then it shifted low. Heavy. She adjusted her grip, bracing her other hand against the floor, and pulled again with more force. The container slid forward with a low scrape. Evelyn leaned back, dragging it up through the opening and onto the floor beside her. It was heavier than it looked. Rex stepped back slightly, watching. Evelyn sat there for a moment, staring at it. The metal case was about the size of a toolbox, sealed tight along the edges. No markings, no labels, just clean, deliberate construction. Her fingers hovered over it. Then she flipped the latch. It resisted. For a second, then snapped open. The lid lifted slowly. Inside, papers. Stacks of them. Neatly bound. Protected in plastic. Evelyn frowned slightly, pulling one bundle free. Maps. Detailed. Layered with lines and markings she didn't fully understand. Coordinates. Survey points. Notes written in careful handwriting along the edges. She flipped through them slowly, then stopped. One word appeared again and again. Mineral. Another page. Rights. Another. Acquisition. Evelyn sat very still, her heart beating a little faster now. "What were you doing, Elias?" she whispered. Rex moved closer again, sniffing the open case, then the maps, then the opening beneath the floor. There was more down there. Evelyn looked back into the space. More containers. More boxes. All sealed the same way. All hidden the same way. Her mind started connecting pieces. The offer. The second offer. The way Vance had known. The way he hadn't needed to look inside. Evelyn set the maps down slowly, reached for another container. This one came up easier. She opened it the same way. Inside, more documents. Older. Some yellowed at the edges but still intact. Contracts. Deeds. Ownership transfers. Names she didn't recognize, but all tied to one thing. Land. The same area. Over and over again. Evelyn exhaled slowly, the weight of it settling into place. "This wasn't a cabin," she said under her breath. Rex looked at her. This was a marker. The word felt right. More right than anything else had so far. She leaned back again, looking around the room. At the walls. At the structure. At the way everything had been kept just intact enough to survive. Not to live in, to hold, to protect. Her eyes drifted back to the opening in the floor. There was still more down there. Much more. Evelyn ran a hand across her face, trying to steady herself. $18,000. For this. For something worth far more than she could even guess. She let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. "You knew," she murmured. Not to Rex, not to the cabin, to Elias. "You knew what you were sitting on." Rex lay down again near the opening, this time not tense, not restless. Calm. Like his job was done. Like he had found what he was meant to find. Evelyn watched him for a moment, then looked back at the containers, the maps, the documents, the hidden space beneath the floor. Everything she thought she understood about this place was wrong. Completely. And now so was everything Harold Vance had said. The cabin wasn't a burden. It wasn't worthless. It was the center of something much bigger, something planned, something protected, something that had been waiting for someone to finally look beneath the surface. Evelyn closed the container slowly, her hands steady now, her thoughts clearer. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was something else, something that had already started pulling attention and would only pull more. She stood slowly, her joints stiff but her posture different now. Stronger, more certain. Rex rose with her, staying close. Evelyn looked once more at the open floor, at what lay beneath, then at the door, at the world outside. "They're going to come back," she said quietly. Rex didn't respond, but he didn't need to. She already knew. And this time, she wasn't the one walking in blind. Not anymore. The cabin felt smaller now, not because it had changed, but because she understood it differently. Every wall, every board, every tool left behind. None of it was random. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, looking at the open space in the floor. The metal cases sat beside her, lids closed again, but no longer unknown. Rex stayed close, watching her, waiting for her next move. Evelyn exhaled slowly, then reached down and pulled the plank back into place, not sealing it, just covering it enough to hide what lay beneath from a casual glance. Not that it would stop anyone who already knew, but it was something. She gathered the papers she had pulled out, stacking them neatly, then slipped them into her bag. Her hands moved slower now, more deliberate. She wasn't rushing anymore. She was thinking. They knew, she said quietly. Rex tilted his head slightly. They knew before I did. She glanced toward the door, toward the road. The image of Harold Vance standing there returned sharp and clear. The way he hadn't needed to look inside. The way his offer had jumped from 5 to 18 without hesitation. He wasn't guessing. He was confirming. Evelyn straightened, her shoulders pulling back slightly. "All right," she said. "Let's find out how much." The drive back into town felt different. The same road, the same trees. But now every mile carried a weight she hadn't felt before. The truck rattled over the rough ground, but Evelyn didn't notice it the same way. Her mind stayed fixed on the documents in her bag. On the word that kept repeating. Mineral. Rex sat quietly beside her, calmer now. Less alert. Like the urgency had passed, but not the awareness. He still watched the road, still listened, still stayed ready. The gas station came into view again first, then the scattered houses, then the edge of town. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. Evelyn pulled the truck to a stop in front of a small, weathered building she had passed countless times before without ever stepping inside. A narrow sign hung above the door. Surveying and Land Services. The paint had faded, but the lettering remained. She turned off the engine and sat for a moment, then reached for her bag. "Stay," she said to Rex. He didn't argue, just watched her as she stepped out and closed the door. The bell above the shop door rang as she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and dust. Maps lined the walls, some framed, some pinned, some rolled into tubes stacked in the corners. A large desk sat near the back, cluttered but organized. An older man stood behind it, late 70s maybe, thin frame, glasses low on his nose, pencil tucked behind his ear. He looked up as she entered. "Afternoon," he said. Evelyn nodded. "Afternoon." She stepped closer, setting her bag down carefully on the desk. "I was told you might be able to help me understand something." The man studied her for a moment, then gestured lightly. "Depends on what it is." Evelyn reached into the bag and pulled out one of the map bundles. She laid it flat on the desk and unfolded it slowly. The man leaned forward slightly. His eyes narrowed. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he reached for his glasses, adjusting them higher on his nose as he looked closer. Then, closer still. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "I was hoping you'd tell me." He didn't answer. His hand moved across the map, tracing one of the lines, then another. His expression changed. Subtle at first, then not subtle at all. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Evelyn held his gaze. "From my property." The man leaned back slowly. "That cabin up on Ridge Hollow?" Evelyn's eyes sharpened slightly. "You know it." "Everybody knows it," he said. "Nobody goes up there." He looked back down at the map, then at her. "Until now, I guess." Evelyn didn't respond. She waited. The man exhaled slowly, then tapped the paper lightly. "These are survey lines," he said. "Old ones, some updated, some not. He pointed to a section near the center. This area here, this is yours? Evelyn nodded. That's what the papers say. He studied it again. Longer this time. Then he leaned back again, slower than before. Well, he said quietly, that explains it. Explains what? He looked at her over the top of his glasses. Why someone would offer you money before you even stepped foot inside. Evelyn felt her chest tighten slightly. How much? She asked. The man hesitated. Not because he didn't know, but because he was choosing how to say it. Hard to put an exact number on it without a full assessment, he said. But if these lines are accurate, and if what they're marking is what I think it is. He paused, then said it plainly. That land isn't just valuable. He tapped the map again. It's critical. Evelyn stood very still. What does that mean? The man leaned forward again, lowering his voice slightly. It means there's mineral potential under that ridge. Not common stuff, not gravel or surface rock. He met her eyes directly. Lithium. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Evelyn didn't react right away. She just stood there, letting it settle. The man continued. It's been talked about for years, quietly, not confirmed publicly, but enough people know to pay attention. He glanced toward the door, then back at her. Enough people to make offers like the one you got. Evelyn swallowed slowly. How much? The man shook his head slightly. More than 18,000. A pause. More than you'd expect. Evelyn nodded once. That was enough. She folded the map carefully, placing it back into her bag. Thank you, she said. The man watched her closely. You planning to sell? Evelyn zipped the bag shut. No. He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. Then you might want to be careful who you talk to. Evelyn gave a small, almost tired smile. I already am. She turned and walked toward the door. The bell rang again as she stepped outside. Rex was waiting, still in the truck, still watching. She climbed in, closing the door behind her. For a moment, she didn't start the engine. She just sat there, hands resting on the wheel, the weight of it all settling into place. Rex leaned slightly toward her, his shoulder pressing against her arm, grounding her. Evelyn exhaled slowly. They knew, she said. Rex didn't move. They've known this whole time. She turned the key. The engine started. Rough, steady, real. She pulled back onto the road, her mind clearer than it had been since this began. The cabin wasn't just something she had inherited. It was something others had been waiting for, watching, planning around. And now it was hers. The road ahead stretched out in front of her again. But this time, she wasn't following it blindly. She was choosing where it led. And whoever came back next wouldn't be dealing with the same woman they met at that gas station. Not anymore. The road back to the cabin felt shorter this time. Not because the distance had changed, but because Evelyn didn't hesitate at the turns. She drove with a steadiness she hadn't had before, guiding the truck up the narrowing path as if she had already decided where she belonged. Rex stayed upright beside her, calm, alert, but no longer searching. He had found what he needed to find. Now he simply watched. The cabin came into view again through the trees, leaning the same way it had before, unchanged on the outside. But Evelyn saw it differently now. She parked in the clearing, cut the engine, and sat for a moment. The silence returned, But it didn't feel as heavy. It felt expected. She stepped out, closing the door behind her. The cold air carried the same dry scent of leaves and stone. The wind moved through the trees, quieter than before, like it had settled into a rhythm. Rex followed close at her side. Together, they walked back into the cabin. The floor, the seam, the hidden space. Everything was exactly as she left it. Evelyn moved to the workbench, setting her bag down carefully. She pulled out the documents again, spreading them across the surface. Maps. Lines. Numbers. All of it pointing to one truth she couldn't ignore anymore. This place mattered. More than she had ever imagined. She stood there for a long moment, hands resting on the edge of the table, her mind working through it. Then a sound. Not from inside. From outside. A vehicle. Closer this time. Not stopping at the edge of the road. Coming all the way up. Evelyn didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply turned her head slightly, listening. Rex was already moving. He stepped toward the door, body tightening just enough to signal readiness. The engine grew louder, then stopped. Evelyn walked outside. Slow, deliberate. The same sedan sat in the clearing. Harold Vance stepped out, closing the door behind him with that same controlled ease. But something had changed. Not in how he stood, in how he looked at her. There was no pretense now, no attempt to hide urgency. "Mrs. Carter," he said. Evelyn didn't respond right away. She stepped down from the porch, stopping a few feet away from him. Rex remained at her side, still, watching. "You came back," she said. Vance gave a small nod. "I did." A pause. Then, "I'll be direct. Again." Evelyn crossed her arms lightly. "Go ahead." He didn't reach for an envelope this time. Didn't pretend. 75,000, he said. The number landed hard. He watched her closely as it did. No delays. No conditions. Immediate transfer. You walk away clean. Evelyn didn't move. Didn't blink. 75, she repeated. Yes. The wind moved lightly through the clearing. Rex's ears flicked once. Evelyn let the silence stretch just long enough. Then she asked calmly, "Who told you?" Vance's expression didn't shift. "I'm not sure I follow." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "You went from 5 to 18 to 75 without stepping inside this cabin." She took a small step closer. "That's not guessing. That's knowing." Another pause. This one longer. Vance's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Information circulates," he said. "Not that fast," Evelyn replied. Silence settled again. The air between them changed. No longer polite, no longer casual. Now it was clear. He wanted something, and she knew it. Evelyn took another step forward. "Let me save you the time," she said quietly. "I'm not selling." Vance studied her. Carefully. "Everyone sells eventually." Evelyn shook her head once. "Not this." His jaw tightened slightly, just enough to show. "You may not fully understand what you're dealing with," he said. "I understand enough." Another pause. Then his tone shifted. Subtle, but real. "There are legal questions that come with something like this," he said. "Ownership, disclosure, prior claims, things that can complicate your position." Evelyn held his gaze. Are you threatening me? No. He shook his head slightly. I'm explaining reality. Evelyn exhaled slowly, then smiled. Not warm, not friendly, just certain. Then let me explain mine. She gestured toward the cabin behind her. This was left to me. Legally, completely. She stepped back slightly, giving herself space, and I've already had it looked at. That caught his attention. Just enough. Evelyn saw it. You know what's under here, she continued, and now I do too. Silence. Heavy. Real. Vance didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either, but the absence of both said enough. Rex shifted slightly beside her, his stance firm. Grounded. Evelyn nodded once. That's what I thought. Another long pause passed between them. Then Vance straightened his coat, adjusted his posture, like he was resetting. I'll give you some time, he said. Evelyn didn't respond. But understand this, he added. Situations like this don't stay simple for long. Evelyn's expression didn't change. Then I'll deal with it when it's not simple. Vance studied her one last time, then nodded. All right. He turned and walked back to his car. This time there was no hesitation in his movement. No pause. No second look. The engine started. The car pulled away. Gone again. Evelyn stood in the clearing, watching the dust settle behind it. The silence returned. Rex relaxed slightly, his body lowering just enough to show the tension had passed. Evelyn let out a slow breath. Her hands trembled just slightly, but she didn't try to stop it. She didn't need to. She turned back toward the cabin, walked inside, closed the door behind her. The space felt different now. Not uncertain. Not confusing. Clear. She moved to the floor again, pulling the board aside without hesitation this time. The containers sat exactly where they had been. Waiting. She crouched beside them, resting her hand lightly on the metal surface. Cold. Solid. Real. This is it, she said quietly. Rex lay down beside her again. Not guarding, not restless, just present. Evelyn looked around the cabin, at the workbench, at the tools, at the structure that had held all of this in silence for years, then back at the opening beneath the floor. She had thought about walking away, about taking the money, about choosing the easy path. But standing here now, that thought didn't hold the same weight anymore. She sat down slowly, leaning back against the wall. The decision had already been made. Not in words, not in a single moment, but piece by piece, step by step. All the way back to that first offer. Evelyn closed her eyes for a brief second, then opened them again. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Rex's tail moved once, slow, steady. Outside, the wind shifted again, but inside, everything held. And for the first time since this began, Evelyn wasn't trying to figure out what to do. She already knew. She was staying, no matter who came next, no matter what followed. She was staying. The first thing Evelyn did was fix the door. It didn't look like much when she was done. The hinges still groaned. The frame still leaned a little to the left, but it closed tight now. It held. That mattered. She worked slowly. One task at a time. Clearing space, reinforcing boards, checking the stove, sealing the worst gaps where the wind pushed through. The cabin didn't become new. It became steady. Rex stayed close through all of it. sometimes watching, sometimes resting, sometimes wandering just far enough to circle the clearing before returning again, always stopping at the same spot near the floor before settling down, like he was reminding her. Don't forget. Evelyn didn't. The containers stayed where they were, hidden again beneath the boards, not untouched, but protected. She checked them each morning, each evening. Not out of fear, out of certainty. This place had been built to hold something. And now it held her. Weeks passed, then months. Winter came fully, settling across the ridge in quiet layers of frost and thin snow. The road grew harder to navigate, but Evelyn learned it. Learned where the ground softened, where the turns tightened. She made fewer trips into town, only when necessary. Food, fuel, information. The man at the survey office didn't ask questions the second time she came in. He only nodded when he saw her, sliding a folder across the desk without speaking. Updates. Confirmations. Nothing that changed what she already knew, but enough to make it real. Other people began to notice, not directly, but in small ways. A truck passing slower than it should. A question asked a little too casually at the store. Still up on that ridge? Evelyn answered simply. Yes. Nothing more. Harold Vance didn't return. Not in person. But letters came. Formal. Carefully worded. Offers written in numbers that grew larger each time. 75 became 100, then more. Each one laid out with precision. Each one promising ease, simplicity, relief. Evelyn read them all, then folded them away. Rex never reacted to the letters, but he always watched her while she read them. Quiet, steady, present. By early spring, the cabin had changed. Not completely, but enough. The roof no longer rattled with every wind. The stove held heat longer. The door shut firm. The workbench had been cleared and reset. It still looked like an old place, but it no longer felt abandoned. It felt lived in. Evelyn stood on the porch one evening, looking out across the clearing. The snow had melted back into the earth, leaving the ground damp and dark. The trees' avschwals had started to shift again, small signs of green pushing through the branches. Rex sat beside her, calm, at ease. For the first time since they arrived, he didn't watch the ground. He watched the horizon. Evelyn followed his gaze. The land stretched out beyond the trees. Quiet. Unchanged. But now she understood what lay beneath it. And what that meant. The first real decision came a few weeks later. Not from pressure. Not from fear. From clarity. Evelyn drove into town and met with the surveyor again. Then another man. A lawyer this time. Not someone brought by Harold Vance. Someone local. Careful. Measured. She laid out the documents. All of them. No guessing. No hiding. The conversation was long, detailed, at times overwhelming, but she stayed with it. Every question, every answer, piece by piece, until it made sense. She didn't sell. Not outright. Instead, she chose something slower, structured. A partnership that allowed development, but kept control where it mattered. Protected the land, protected her, protected what had been left behind. It wasn't quick, it wasn't simple, but it was right. summer came quietly. The cabin stood stronger now. Not perfect, but solid. Evelyn added small things over time. A second chair on the porch, a shelf near the stove, a place for tools that she began to use more often than she expected. She found herself fixing things, not just maintaining, improving. Rex adapted with her. His routines shifted. He no longer hovered over the floor. He moved freely now, resting in the shade, walking the edges of the clearing, checking the path without urgency. His work had changed. From searching to staying. One evening, as the light settled into that soft, golden tone that only lasted a few minutes before fading, Evelyn sat on the porch with a cup of coffee in her hands. The air was warmer now, the wind softer. Rex lay at her feet, his breathing slow and even. Evelyn looked out across the land again, not as something unknown, not as something threatening, but as something steady, something that had been there long before her, and would remain long after. She thought about Elias, about the way he had lived, quiet, unassuming, never explaining more than he needed to, and yet everything he had done had led here, to this place, to this moment. He hadn't left her instructions. He hadn't left her answers. He had left her something else, the chance to find them. Evelyn took a slow sip of her coffee, set the cup down beside her, then leaned back slightly, letting the chair settle beneath her. Rex shifted once, adjusting his position, then rested again. Content. The cabin stood behind her. The land stretched out in front. And for the first time in a long while, Evelyn wasn't thinking about what she had lost, or what she might lose. She wasn't counting dollars, or weighing options. She was simply there, present, steady, on something that held. She reached down, resting her hand lightly against Rex's side. His breathing stayed even, warm, real. Evelyn looked out one more time across the clearing, her eyes tracing the line where the trees met the open sky. And she understood. Not in words, not all at once, but clearly enough. Some things aren't meant to be seen right away. Not because they're hidden, but because they need time. Time to be noticed, time to be understood. Time for the right person to arrive. Evelyn exhaled slowly. The wind moved softly through the trees. The cabin held. Rex rested, and the ground beneath them remained exactly where it had always been, waiting, until someone finally chose to stay long enough to look beneath the surface. Evelyn didn't move for a long while. The light had almost gone, leaving just that quiet blue hour where everything softens. Rex shifted once at her feet, then settled again, like he always had when the world finally felt still.
She looked out across the land, and then, without thinking, her eyes drifted back to the cabin behind her, to the floor she had almost ignored, to the place she would have worked over if not for him. Rex hadn't understood money. He hadn't understood offers or rather or what any of it meant. He had only known something wasn't right and refused to work past it. Evelyn let out a slow breath. On that time, she thought survival meant moving on, finding something easier, something certain. But the only thing that had ever held was the one place she almost gave up on, the one thing she didn't understand. Her hand rested gently against Rex's side. "You knew," she whispered. His tail moved once, slow and quiet, like the answer had always been simple. Somewhere out there, the world was still rushing, still buying, selling, deciding things too quickly. But here she stayed, and because she stayed, she saw what had been waiting all along. So let me ask you something. What's the one thing in your life you almost walked away from because you didn't understand it yet?